This is Dave Dirks, Chief Marketing Officer for Central Willamette Credit Union, as a part of my ongoing series on Dave's book recommends. And these are books that I highly recommend that are on my bookshelf on a permanent basis, because I read a lot of business books year over year. Some of them are, I read them, or I usually finish all of them. Some of them go back to the bookstore to be a credit again. But there are a few over my career that I have to say have had an outstanding impression upon me, because the authors have really taken the time to provide really meaty insights that are, you can grab a hold of and you can start to think about implementing in your business to make it more successful than it is today. So my next book is a book by a well-known author. Actually, he wrote a book that I read a few years ago called Making Ideas Happen, Overcoming the Obstacles Between Vision and Reality. That's not the book I'm recommending. It's actually a good book, but Scott Belsky, B-E-L-S-K-Y, Scott Belsky, is the author of a book that he wrote after that called The Messy Middle. And the subtitle is Finding Your Way Through the Hardest and Most Crucial Part of Any Bold Venture. Now, Scott Belsky is a venture capitalist, so he actually started that way by developing his own venture that was eventually bought out by another company. So he has lots of experience in and around advising and working with a lot of new ventures. These are new businesses. You can call them what you want. But everything that he talks about, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute, everything that he talks about in The Messy Middle is actually applicable to your personal life, if you manage a business. It's a very, it just took me by surprise, because I wasn't even aware that this book existed until probably a couple of months ago, and I was at one of the used bookstores in Eugene, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, I didn't know he had this book. Let me give you the premise here, the messy middle. So picture this in your mind. When you start a business or you're in a business, but typically when you start a business, everybody kind of thinks like we're just going to have this trajectory, like this line is going to go straight up. It's going to be a fairly steep climb from actually day one to our ongoing success. And it's in our minds, it's a very smooth and straight upward line. But the reality is that's not really how life works. I don't know. I have kids, right? So I raised 4 kids with my wife, and then, they're all on their own. But I've learned that, they were all doing progressively well over time. So they definitely were, each of them in their own way. But you know what I noticed? There's the messy middle. The messy middle it looks jagged. It's not it's not a straight line up. Raising kids, not a straight line up. It's like you go through good times, you go through bad, you up through, blah, 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 blah. What you want to see, though, is an upward trend, but you know that the messy middle, the part between the time that you actually launch a business to the time you actually start maturing it a couple of years down the road, that's not a straight line. It's a jagged line. Picture that. And he actually has some good visualizations in the book. And so he actually kind of uses his own experience in a company that he was developing called Behance, which was really developed for creatives. Anyway, the point of the matter is he went through all kinds of things when he started the venture, and he's learned a lot working with other ventures as well, which is very applicable to someone either considering a business or in the middle of it. And he has a couple of principles here. You really need to get this book. This is another top one. First of all, he talks about enduring the volatility of the middle phase. And what Belsky emphasizes here is that after the honeymoon, when you start a new job, when you start a new business, in particular in our case, there's that honeymoon period. It's like, hey, everything's all nice and shiny, and it's like, hey, we're all new, and then something happens, right? There's a blip. Maybe sales are up, but profitability is down. Maybe traffic count to the store is low, although purchases in each transaction are high. That's the jagged part of long-term success. It's not a straight line up. It always, and you have to accept it when you are in a business, either managing now, it's like, it's never going to be clean. It's never going to be, oh, this is just wonderful, and we're just going to get to complete success. Doesn't happen. Not reality. Buckle up. Because if you're contemplating owning a business, the jagged edge is still a success line as long as it's moving up. Because here's what's happening. He's saying, hey, as you start to move up and slowly become more successful, here's what's happening. You're learning. You're going down on those downward sides of that jagged, right? There's the peaks, and then there's that downward side. Well, that downward side is an opportunity to learn, to determine what can we do differently. Do we have to change something here in our business model, in the way we manage things, our pricing, who knows what? All those variables in a business, they all have to be hitting on all cylinders if you want to have long-term success. The other thing he says is manufacture short-term rewards and celebrate progress. I think oftentimes when you're, you have a business, you're a one-person shop, maybe you have a couple of people, you're so into the weeds that you forget to stop and take a moment and actually celebrate the small successes as well as the bigger successes, and to be able to kind of make sure that there's some rewards for everybody involved, including yourself. Because the fastest way to business burnout is to be so far into the weeds that you cannot see even what your goal is. Like you're just 24/7 burning the candle down to a nub. So anyway, celebrating progress when it happens. Don't miss that opportunity. And I think he also talks a lot about being self-aware about the highs and the lows as you're moving up. So even though your business trajectory might be up, it means you're moving forward, you are making progress. There's still things that are going to happen. Be aware of where those things are. Like where are the highs, where are the lows, and where's everything in between? And then this was great too. I think he also makes a big deal and has lots of examples of how focusing on optimizing what works rather than fixing on what's broken is often something that's overlooked by people who are in business as well, which means we get so fixated on this isn't working. Well, yeah, I'm not saying you don't focus on that. Neither is he. He's saying, but you got to optimize what is. So don't forget to actually, because sometimes we go, oh, that's successful, and you just kind of focus your energy on what's broken or what seems to be broken or not working at the optimal level that you think it has potential to do. In this case, what Belsky is saying is make sure you optimize what is working. If you get, you have a sales trend where, your customer conversion is high, or your share of wallet, let's say the basket, like how much they purchase when they come back to your website or they come into your store, that's something you got to say, okay, how do we make sure that we do that? If you see certain products that they're hitting that are more profitable versus others, then you got to optimize the profitability in those products. There's all kinds of things that you can do. People generally focus on the negative. They look for the flaws and let's say we're going to fix it. Yes, but if you don't look at what's working and optimize that, you miss out. And then lastly, maintain flexibility and never assume your business or your venture is done. There's no end to this. I mean, talk to business owners that have been in business more than 5 years, and they'll tell you, they're never done. There's always new competition. There's always new challenges. The messy middle that he talks about in this book, you need to avoid the trap that you've arrived, because if you do that, unless you're selling your business, perhaps, would be the only scenario I could think of, and you're walking away, there is no end to pursuing the dream of building your business and making it successful. So stay adaptable is what he's talking about. Be willing to change your approach. I know lots of business owners I run into, they fell in love with this little thing that they do, and they're like, even if it's not working, they're like, but I like this. It just works for me. Well, the problem is if it's not really working in your business, and even though you like it, you may just have to walk away from it. It's hard for all of us, I know. But anyway, great book. This is a huge one, The Messy Middle, by Scott Belsky. Get it on your bookshelf and read it, please. This is Dave Dirks, thanking you for taking the time to listen to our podcast, when we wish you at Central Willamette a great day.
The information provided here is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any financial decisions.